What if the most fundamental assumption about your mind is completely backwards? Right now, as you process these words, mainstream science tells us your brain generates consciousness like a computer running software. But emerging research suggests something far more extraordinary. What if consciousness isn't produced by your brain at all, but instead actively controls it, orchestrating the neural symphony from some deeper, more mysterious level of reality? Welcome to a journey that will gently challenge everything you thought you knew about the nature of your own awareness. I'm here to guide you through one of the most profound questions in science and philosophy, one that's quietly revolutionizing our understanding of what it means to be conscious. Whether you're settling in for the evening or seeking a moment of contemplative reflection, let this exploration wash over you like a calm tide of wonder. Tonight we'll drift through landscapes of cutting-edge neuroscience, ancient wisdom, and quantum mysteries. We'll discover how your conscious experience might be far more powerful and fundamental than you've ever imagined. And by the end, you may find yourself looking at your own mind in an entirely new light. For centuries, we've built our understanding of consciousness on what seems like solid ground. The brain, with its 100 billion neurons firing in intricate patterns, creates the rich tapestry of your inner experience. Your thoughts, emotions, memories, and that ineffable sense of being you all emerge from this biological machinery like steam rising from a kettle. This materialist view has served us well. It's led to remarkable discoveries about how different brain regions contribute to various aspects of consciousness. We can now see which areas light up when you remember your childhood home, feel joy, or make a decision. We can even predict some of your choices before you're consciously aware of making them. But what if this entire framework, elegant as it appears, has the relationship backwards? Recent research is revealing something that challenges our most basic assumptions about the mind-brain relationship. Instead of consciousness being a passive byproduct of neural activity, evidence is mounting that consciousness actively controls, orchestrates, and directs brain function in ways that seem almost impossible under traditional models. Take a moment to consider your own experience right now. As you listen to these words, you're not merely receiving information passively, you're actively choosing where to direct your attention. You can decide to focus on the sound of my voice, or shift to notice any background sounds in your environment. You can recall a memory from yesterday, or imagine what you'll do tomorrow. This capacity for conscious control feels immediate and direct, doesn't it? Modern neuroscience has given us an unprecedented view into the brain's activity. Using advanced brain imaging techniques, researchers can watch in real time as different neural networks communicate, compete, and coordinate with each other. What they've discovered is both beautiful and puzzling. Your brain operates more like a vast orchestra than a simple computer. Different sections, like the strings and brass in a symphony, handle different types of processing. Visual areas process what you see, auditory regions handle sounds, memory centers store and retrieve information, and motor areas control movement. But here's where it gets interesting. This orchestra seems to have a conductor. Scientists have identified what they call the global workspace of consciousness. This isn't a single brain region, but rather a network that integrates information from across the entire brain. When information enters this global workspace, something remarkable happens. It becomes conscious, it gets broadcasted throughout the brain, influencing everything from memory formation to decision making. But who or what is doing this broadcasting? Traditional neuroscience suggests It's simply the result of neural competition, with the strongest signals winning out. Yet this explanation leaves something crucial unexplained: your sense of being the one in control. When you decide to focus on these words right now, neural activity in your attention networks increases. When you choose to recall a specific memory, your hippocampus and associated regions become active. The correlation is clear and consistent. But correlation, as any scientist will tell you, doesn't prove causation. Here's where our story takes a fascinating turn. Neuroscientists have discovered that the brain operates through what they call top-down and bottom-up processing. Bottom-up processing is straightforward. Sensory information flows from your eyes, ears, and other senses up through various processing levels to create your experience of the world. But top-down processing is far more mysterious. This is when higher-level brain areas send signals down to influence lower-level processing. Your expectations can literally change what you see. Your beliefs can alter how you interpret sensory information. Your conscious intentions can modify the activity of neurons throughout your brain. This top-down control is so sophisticated that it challenges our basic understanding of how the brain works. It's as if the symphony's music is somehow influencing the conductor rather than the other way around. Or perhaps more accurately, as if there's another conductor we haven't been able to see clearly. Research has shown that conscious states are associated with synchronized patterns of neural activity that display characteristics of what physicists call self-organized criticality. This is a state where the brain balances on the edge between order and chaos, allowing it to rapidly transition between different modes of processing. But what maintains this delicate balance? What keeps the brain operating at these critical transition points? Some researchers propose that consciousness itself serves as this organizing principle. Rather than emerging from neural activity, consciousness might be what orchestrates the brain's complex dynamics, guiding it towards states that support awareness, attention, and intentional action. As you continue listening, notice how your own consciousness seems to move through different states. Sometimes your attention feels sharp and focused, other times more diffuse and relaxed. Sometimes thoughts arise unbidden, other times you direct your thinking with clear intention. This fluid dance between different modes of awareness suggests a control system far more sophisticated than simple neural computation. Now we venture into territory that's both more speculative and potentially more revolutionary. Some researchers are exploring whether quantum mechanics, the strange physics that governs the microscopic world, might play a role in consciousness. This isn't about mystical quantum healing or the idea that your thoughts directly manipulate reality. Rather, it's about whether the brain might use quantum effects in its normal operations and whether consciousness might emerge from or interact with quantum processes in ways we're only beginning to understand. The brain, after all, is a quantum system. Every neuron, every synapse, every molecule operates according to quantum mechanical principles. Most scientists have assumed that quantum effects are too fragile to survive in the warm, noisy environment of the brain. But recent research suggests this assumption might be wrong. Studies have found evidence of quantum coherence in biological systems, from photosynthesis in plants to navigation in birds. These discoveries show that life has evolved ways to harness and protect quantum effects, even in complex, noisy environments. Could the brain be doing something similar? Some theories suggest that consciousness might involve quantum processes that occur in the brain's microtubules, tiny structures within neurons. Others propose that consciousness emerges from quantum field interactions that span the entire brain. These remain highly speculative ideas with no scientific consensus on their validity. But here's what makes these possibilities intriguing. If consciousness does involve quantum processes, it might explain how conscious awareness can influence brain activity in ways that seem to violate classical physics. Quantum systems can display non-local connections, where changes in one part instantly affect distant parts. They can exist in superposition states, embodying multiple possibilities simultaneously until observation collapses them into definite outcomes. Could consciousness be a quantum phenomenon that interfaces with the classical neural networks of the brain? Could your conscious choices involve quantum processes that then influence the probability of different neural firing patterns? These questions push us to the very edge of current scientific understanding. Let's ground ourselves in some concrete evidence. Research has consistently shown that conscious intention can produce measurable changes in brain activity and behavior. When you consciously decide to move your hand, specific patterns of neural activity precede and accompany that movement. When you choose to focus your attention on a particular stimulus, attention-related brain networks become more active while competing networks are suppressed. But perhaps more remarkably, conscious practices like meditation can literally reshape the brain. Long-term meditators show increased grey matter in areas associated with attention and emotional regulation. They display greater connectivity between different brain regions. Their brains age more slowly and maintain cognitive function better than those of non-meditators. These changes aren't just correlations. Controlled studies have shown that meditation training causes these brain changes. The conscious practice of directing attention, cultivating awareness, and regulating emotions physically alters neural structure and function. This suggests that consciousness isn't just a passive reflection of brain activity, but an active force that can guide the brain's development and operation. Even more intriguing is research on the placebo effect. When you consciously believe a treatment will help you, that belief can trigger real physiological changes. Pain can decrease, immune function can improve, and symptoms can resolve, all through the power of conscious expectation. The brain regions involved in these placebo responses are the same ones associated with conscious control and top-down regulation. Brain-computer interfaces provide another compelling window into consciousness-brain interactions. These technologies allow people to control external devices using only their conscious intentions. A paralyzed person can move a robotic arm simply by thinking about movement. The conscious intention produces specific patterns of brain activity that can be decoded and translated into action. What's remarkable is how quickly and effectively people can learn to use these systems. It's as if consciousness has a natural capacity to interface with and control neural processes given the right technological bridge. One of the most influential theories in consciousness research is called global workspace theory. This framework proposes that consciousness arises when information becomes globally available across the brain through a process of competitive selection and broadcasting. Imagine your brain as a vast library with countless specialized departments. Each department processes different types of information: visual patterns, sounds, memories, emotions, motor plans. Most of this processing happens unconsciously, like librarians working quietly in their sections. But sometimes, information from one department becomes so important or relevant that it gets broadcast throughout the entire library. Suddenly, all departments have access to this information. They can use it, respond to it, and integrate it with their own processing. This moment of global broadcasting, according to the theory, is when information becomes conscious. But here's the crucial question: what determines which information gets broadcast? Traditional interpretations suggest it's simply a matter of neural competition, with the strongest signals winning out. But emerging research suggests something more sophisticated is at work. The global workspace appears to be actively controlled and modulated. Attention can bias which information gets selected for broadcasting. Intentions can influence how broadcasted information is processed and integrated. Conscious states like focused meditation or relaxed awareness can change the entire dynamics of the global workspace. This suggests that consciousness isn't just a passive result of global broadcasting, but an active participant in controlling and directing the process. It's as if consciousness is both the content being broadcast and the system doing the broadcasting. Take a breath and imagine what this could mean for you. Every moment of your waking life, your consciousness is actively selecting which information to amplify and broadcast throughout your brain. Your current experience of listening to these words, the background awareness of your body, the occasional thoughts that arise and pass away, all of these are the result of conscious selection and broadcasting processes. Philosophers and scientists often speak of the hard problem of consciousness. This is the question of how subjective, first-person experience arises from objective, physical processes. How does the firing of neurons give rise to the felt sense of redness when you see a rose, or the emotional warmth you feel when thinking of someone you love? Traditional approaches to this problem assume that consciousness is something the brain produces, like a television producing an image. But what if this assumption is backwards? What if consciousness is more like the viewer watching the television, actively choosing which channels to tune into and how to interpret what's displayed? This perspective suggests that the hard problem might be based on a false premise. Instead of asking how the brain creates consciousness, we might need to ask how consciousness uses the brain. Instead of wondering how neural activity produces subjective experience, we might explore how subjective experience controls and directs neural activity. This shift in perspective doesn't solve all the mysteries, but it does reframe them in potentially more productive ways. It suggests that consciousness might be a fundamental feature of reality, not something that emerges from complex arrangements of matter. Just as mass and electric charge are basic properties of particles, perhaps consciousness is a basic property of certain types of organized information. If consciousness is fundamental rather than emergent, then its capacity to control and influence physical processes becomes less mysterious. Rather than being an epiphenomenon with no causal power, consciousness becomes an active player in the unfolding of events. As we drift deeper into this exploration, it's worth considering where this research might lead us. If consciousness does indeed control the brain in ways we're only beginning to understand, the implications are profound. For medicine, it could revolutionize how we treat disorders of consciousness, from coma to depression. Instead of simply medicating the brain, we might learn to work directly with consciousness itself. We might develop technologies that can enhance conscious control, helping people with attention disorders, addiction, or emotional dysregulation. For technology, it could lead to more sophisticated brain-computer interfaces that work with consciousness rather than simply reading neural signals. We might develop systems that can amplify conscious intention, making it easier for people to control external devices or even modify their own brain states. For our understanding of ourselves, it could fundamentally change how we view human nature. If consciousness has genuine causal power, if your thoughts and intentions can literally shape your brain and influence your reality, then you are far more than a biological machine following predetermined programs. The research we've explored tonight represents just the beginning of this revolution in understanding. Scientists are developing new technologies to study consciousness with unprecedented precision. They're creating computer models that simulate conscious control processes. They're exploring how consciousness might interface with quantum processes in the brain. We stand at the threshold of discoveries that could transform not just neuroscience, but our entire worldview. The possibility that consciousness controls the brain, rather than the other way around, invites us to see ourselves as conscious agents with genuine power to shape our neural patterns, our behaviours, and our lives. As you continue on this journey with me, remember that you're not just learning about consciousness, you're experiencing it firsthand. Every moment of attention, every conscious choice about where to direct your awareness is an example of the very phenomenon we're exploring. You are consciousness investigating itself, using the tools of science and philosophy to peer into the depths of your own being. In our next exploration, we'll delve deeper into the practical implications of conscious control, examining how you might harness these insights to enhance your own awareness and well-being. But for now, let these ideas settle gently into your consciousness, like seeds planted in fertile soil, ready to grow in ways we can barely imagine. And if you're curious about how consciousness might connect to even deeper mysteries of reality, you might find our previous exploration fascinating. Could quantum entanglement be the hidden science behind manifestation? There, we journey into the quantum realm to discover connections that challenge everything we thought we knew about the relationship between mind and matter. But consciousness controlling the brain is only part of a much larger story. As we continue drifting through this landscape of discovery, we encounter something that challenges our assumptions even further. What if consciousness doesn't just control your brain, but extends far beyond the boundaries of your skull? Traditional neuroscience has long operated under what we might call the brain in a vat model. The idea that your mind exists entirely within your cranium, processing information from the outside world, but fundamentally separate from it. Yet emerging research in embodied cognition suggests this view is profoundly incomplete. Your consciousness, it turns out, may be far more distributed than you've ever imagined. It appears to emerge not just from neural activity, but from the dynamic interaction between your brain, your body, and your environment. Every heartbeat, every breath, every subtle shift in posture contributes to the symphony of your conscious experience. Consider this moment as you listen. Your consciousness isn't simply residing in your head, observing the world through the windows of your senses. Instead, it's actively distributed throughout your entire being. The tension or relaxation in your shoulders right now is part of your conscious state. The rhythm of your breathing influences your thoughts and emotions. The temperature of the air on your skin shapes your awareness in ways both subtle and profound. Research has revealed that your heart contains approximately 40,000 neurons, forming what some scientists call the heart brain. This cardiac neural network processes information independently and can influence the brain in your skull through complex feedback loops. When your heart rhythm becomes coherent and stable, it can actually enhance cognitive performance, emotional balance, and decision-making abilities. Your gut, too, contains an extensive neural network, sometimes called the second brain. The enteric nervous system houses over 500 million neurons and produces many of the same neurotransmitters found in your skull brain, including serotonin and dopamine. The bidirectional communication between your gut and brain profoundly influences mood, intuition, and even complex decision-making processes. This distributed model of consciousness helps explain phenomena that have long puzzled neuroscientists. Why do we speak of gut feelings when making important decisions? Why does changing your posture affect your confidence and cognitive performance? Why do breathing practices from ancient contemplative traditions produce such profound effects on mental states? The answer appears to be that consciousness isn't confined to neural networks alone. It emerges from the integrated activity of your entire embodied system as it interacts dynamically with its environment. As we venture deeper into this exploration, we encounter one of the most revolutionary ideas in modern neuroscience, the predictive processing model of consciousness. This framework suggests that your brain isn't primarily a passive receiver of information, but an active predictor, constantly generating models of reality. Every moment of your waking life, your brain creates predictions about what you're likely to experience next. These predictions are based on patterns learned from past experience, current context, and subtle environmental cues you're not even consciously aware of. When sensory information arrives, it's compared against these predictions. If the prediction is accurate, the information is efficiently processed. If there's a mismatch, prediction error signals propagate upward through brain hierarchies, updating your mental model of reality. But here's where it becomes truly fascinating. Consciousness appears to play an active role in generating and selecting these predictions. Your conscious beliefs, expectations, and intentions literally shape what your brain predicts you'll experience. And because these predictions influence how sensory information is processed and interpreted, consciousness effectively participates in constructing your experienced reality. This isn't metaphysical speculation, but measurable neuroscience. Studies have shown that your conscious expectations can alter the activity of sensory processing areas before any stimulus is even presented. If you expect to see something, visual areas of your brain begin preparing for that input. If you expect to feel pain, pain processing networks become primed for activation. The placebo effect, which we touched on earlier, provides a perfect example of predictive consciousness in action. When you consciously believe a treatment will help, that belief generates predictions of improvement throughout your nervous system. These predictions then influence everything from pain processing to immune function to neurotransmitter release, often producing the very improvements that were predicted. Take a moment to notice your own predictive consciousness at work. As you listen to these words, your brain is constantly predicting what might come next. Sometimes these predictions are confirmed, creating a sense of flow and understanding. Other times, an unexpected idea or phrase creates a moment of surprise, generating prediction errors that capture your attention and update your mental model of what this exploration is about. Your consciousness isn't just passively receiving these words like data entering a computer, it's actively participating in their interpretation, filling in gaps, making connections to your own experience, and generating predictions about where the narrative might lead. You are co-creating this very experience through the predictive activity of your conscious awareness. But consciousness extends beyond even your embodied predictive brain. Research in social neuroscience reveals that your consciousness is profoundly shaped by and shapes the consciousness of others around you. We are, it seems, inherently social beings whose awareness emerges partly through our connections with other conscious minds. When you interact with another person, something remarkable happens in your brain. Mirror neuron systems activate, creating internal simulations of the other person's actions, emotions, and even intentions. Your brain literally models what it might be like to be in their position, generating a form of embodied empathy that influences your own conscious experience. This neural mirroring goes far beyond simple imitation. Studies have shown that when people engage in deep conversation or shared activities, their brainwaves begin to synchronize. This neural entrainment creates a form of collective consciousness where individual awareness becomes part of a larger, shared field of experience. Contemplative traditions have long recognized this interconnected nature of consciousness. Practices like loving kindness meditation specifically cultivate awareness of our fundamental interconnectedness with other conscious beings. Modern neuroscience is now providing mechanisms for understanding how these practices might actually influence both individual and collective consciousness. Research has found that when groups of people practice meditation together, they can influence measurable aspects of their shared environment. Studies have suggested correlations between collective meditation practices and reduced crime rates, decreased accident rates, and improved social coherence in surrounding communities. While these findings remain controversial and require further replication, they point toward possibilities that challenge our individualistic assumptions about consciousness. This isn't to suggest that your thoughts directly control external events, but rather that consciousness might be far more interconnected and influential than our current scientific models fully capture. The boundaries between self and other, between individual consciousness and collective awareness, may be more fluid and permeable than we typically assume. As you continue listening, you might notice how your own consciousness is being influenced by this shared exploration. Your awareness is interacting with ideas that have emerged from countless other conscious minds. The researchers, philosophers, and contemplatives who have contributed to our understanding of consciousness. In a very real sense, your individual awareness is participating in a vast, collective inquiry into the nature of consciousness itself. Now, we venture into territory that bridges the gap between consciousness research and quantum physics in ways that are both scientifically grounded and profoundly mysterious. The emerging field of quantum biology has discovered that quantum effects aren't just theoretical curiosities confined to physics laboratories. They play crucial roles in biological processes, including potentially in consciousness itself. For decades, scientists assumed that quantum coherence, the delicate state where quantum systems maintain their wave-like properties, couldn't survive in the warm, noisy environment of living systems. But research has shattered this assumption. Quantum coherence has been discovered in photosynthesis, where it helps plants capture and transfer energy with remarkable efficiency. It's been found in the magnetic navigation systems of birds, where it may help them sense Earth's magnetic field during long migrations. Most intriguingly for our exploration, some researchers have found evidence of quantum effects in microtubules, the structural components within neurons. These microscopic tubes appear to maintain quantum coherence even within the complex environment of the brain. While the significance of this discovery remains debated, it opens fascinating possibilities for understanding how consciousness might interface with quantum processes. The theory of orchestrated objective reduction, proposed by physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, suggests that consciousness might emerge from quantum processes in microtubules. According to this speculative model, Quantum superposition states in these neural structures could provide the basis for conscious experience, with consciousness emerging when these quantum states collapse into definite outcomes. This remains a highly controversial theory with no scientific consensus on its validity. Critics argue that the brain is too warm and noisy to maintain the quantum coherence necessary for such processes. Supporters point to the growing evidence of quantum effects in biological systems as proof that life has evolved sophisticated mechanisms for protecting and harnessing quantum phenomena. If consciousness does involve quantum processes, it might help explain some of the mysteries we've been exploring. Quantum systems can display non-local correlations, where changes in one part instantly influence distant parts. They can exist in superposition states, embodying multiple possibilities simultaneously until observation collapses them into definite outcomes. These properties might provide mechanisms for consciousness to influence brain activity in ways that seem to transcend classical physics. But even if consciousness doesn't directly involve quantum processes, the quantum nature of reality itself provides a context for understanding consciousness that's radically different from classical physics. In the quantum realm, the act of observation plays a fundamental role in determining what becomes real. Information, rather than matter, appears to be the most basic constituent of reality. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that consciousness might play a special role in the collapse of quantum superposition states. While this remains highly speculative and controversial, it points toward a universe where consciousness isn't separate from physical reality, but intimately involved in its unfolding. As you contemplate these possibilities, remember that we're exploring the very edges of scientific understanding. These ideas represent attempts to bridge the gap between our subjective experience of consciousness and the objective descriptions of physics. Whether consciousness directly involves quantum processes or not, the quantum revolution in physics has fundamentally changed how we think about the relationship between mind and matter, between observer and observed. Perhaps nowhere is the evidence for conscious control of brain function clearer than in research on contemplative practices. Meditation, in its many forms, provides a unique laboratory where consciousness can observe and influence its own processes with remarkable precision. When experienced meditators enter deep states of concentration or awareness, their brains display patterns of activity that seem almost impossible under traditional models of neural function. Long-term practitioners can enter states where normal self-referential brain networks become dramatically quieted, leading to experiences of expanded awareness that transcend ordinary subject-object boundaries. During these states, practitioners often report a sense of consciousness without content, pure awareness itself, free from the usual stream of thoughts, emotions, and sensory experiences. Neuroscientist research has found corresponding changes in brain activity, with decreased activity in the default mode network and increased synchronization across different brain regions. What's particularly remarkable is how quickly these practices can produce measurable changes in brain structure and function. Studies have shown that even brief meditation training can increase grey matter density in areas associated with attention, emotional regulation, and self-awareness. The brains of long-term practitioners show increased cortical thickness, enhanced connectivity between regions, and more efficient neural processing. These changes aren't just correlational. Randomized controlled studies have demonstrated that meditation training causes these neuroplastic adaptations. The conscious practice of directing attention, cultivating awareness, and regulating mental states literally reshapes the neural substrate from which consciousness emerges. But meditation research reveals something even more profound about the nature of consciousness. Advanced practitioners often report states where the usual sense of being a separate self dissolves, replaced by a vast field of open awareness. During these states, consciousness appears to recognize its own fundamental nature, free from the limitations of ordinary identity and conceptual thinking. Neuroscientist studies of these states have found patterns of brain activity that suggest a profound reorganization of normal conscious processing. Instead of the usual fragmented, constantly changing patterns of neural activation, the brain displays coherent, synchronized activity across multiple regions. It's as if consciousness temporarily transcends the usual constraints of neural processing to recognize its own deeper nature. These findings suggest that consciousness has capacities that extend far beyond its ordinary functions. Through contemplative practice, awareness can apparently access states and capabilities that reveal its fundamental nature as something more than simply an emergent property of neural computation. If you enjoy drifting through these explorations without interruption, members get every episode 48 hours early, completely ad-free. You can join them whenever you feel ready. The evidence for conscious control extends into the realm of healing in ways that continue to surprise medical researchers. The mind-body connection, once dismissed as unscientific, has emerged as one of the most robust areas of medical research, revealing mechanisms through which consciousness can influence physical health in profound ways. The placebo effect, which we've mentioned several times, represents perhaps the clearest evidence of consciousness controlling biological processes. When you consciously believe a treatment will help, that belief can trigger cascades of physiological changes throughout your body. Pain can diminish, immune function can improve, inflammation can decrease, and symptoms can resolve through the power of conscious expectation alone. But the mechanisms involved are far from simple. Placebo responses involve complex interactions between consciousness, expectation, and multiple biological systems, including the nervous, endocrine, and immune systems. Your conscious beliefs can influence the release of endorphins, dopamine, and other neurotransmitters. They can modulate inflammatory responses and even affect gene expression. Recent research has revealed that the placebo effect isn't just about deception or wishful thinking. Even when people know they're taking a placebo, they can still experience significant improvements in symptoms. This suggests that the conscious act of engaging in a healing ritual, regardless of specific beliefs about the treatment, can trigger beneficial physiological responses. Nocebo effects provide the mirror image of placebo responses. When you consciously expect negative outcomes, those expectations can manifest as real physical symptoms. Studies have shown that simply being told about potential side effects can cause people to experience those very side effects, even when taking inert substances. These findings reveal that consciousness doesn't just observe health and illness, it actively participates in creating the conditions for both. Your conscious attitudes, beliefs, and expectations create a kind of internal environment that can support either healing or disease. Stress research provides another window into consciousness health connections. Chronic stress, largely mediated through conscious worry and rumination, can suppress immune function, increase inflammation, and accelerate cellular aging. Conversely, stress reduction practices that involve conscious regulation of attention and emotion can reverse these processes, promoting healing and longevity. Mind-body practices like yoga, tai chi, and qigong demonstrate the healing potential of integrated consciousness-body approaches. These practices combine conscious attention, breath regulation, and gentle movement to create states that promote both physical and mental well-being. Research has shown they can reduce chronic pain, improve immune function, and even influence genetic expression in ways that promote health and resilience. Consciousness doesn't just control existing brain functions, it appears to be the source of genuine novelty and creativity in ways that challenge our understanding of how innovation emerges. The creative process, from artistic inspiration to scientific discovery, seems to involve consciousness accessing information and possibilities that transcend ordinary logical thinking. Many of history's greatest discoveries have emerged through sudden insights that seem to come from nowhere. The structure of benzene came to chemist Auguste Kekulé in a dream of a snake biting its own tail. The theory of relativity emerged for Einstein during moments of relaxed contemplation rather than focused calculation. Mathematical insights often appear as complete, fully formed understandings that conscious reasoning then works to verify and communicate. Neuroscience research on creativity has revealed that breakthrough insights often emerge during states of relaxed awareness rather than concentrated effort. The default mode network, active during rest and reflection, appears to play a crucial role in making novel connections between disparate ideas and experiences. But creativity involves more than just novel recombination of existing elements. Genuine creativity seems to involve consciousness accessing possibilities that didn't previously exist in any explicit form. This suggests that consciousness might have the capacity to participate in the generation of genuine novelty, not just the rearrangement of existing patterns. Studies of highly creative individuals have found that they often display unusual patterns of brain connectivity, with increased communication between regions that are typically more segregated. During creative insights, there are often bursts of high-frequency brain activity, particularly in the right temporal lobe, suggesting moments when consciousness suddenly accesses new information or perspectives. The creative process also demonstrates consciousness's capacity for what we might call productive failure. Creative work often involves periods of confusion, uncertainty, and apparent dead ends. Yet consciousness seems capable of using these challenging states as raw material for breakthrough insights. The willingness to remain present with uncertainty and confusion, rather than immediately seeking resolution, appears to be crucial for accessing deeper creative possibilities. As you reflect on your own creative experiences, you might recognize this pattern. Often, your best ideas don't emerge through linear reasoning, but through sudden shifts in perspective that seem to come from a deeper level of awareness. These moments suggest that consciousness has access to sources of information and insight that transcend ordinary thinking processes. We now approach territory where science meets mystery in ways that stretch the boundaries of current understanding. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that consciousness might play a fundamental role, not just in observing reality, but in participating in its very creation from a field of infinite possibilities. The quantum realm operates according to principles that seem to mirror certain aspects of consciousness itself. Quantum systems exist in superposition states, embodying multiple possibilities simultaneously until observation collapses them into definite outcomes. They display non-local correlations, where changes in one part of a system instantly affect distant parts regardless of physical separation. They demonstrate what physicists call complementarity, where the same system can display apparently contradictory properties depending on how it's observed. These quantum principles resonate with descriptions of consciousness from contemplative traditions. Awareness, according to these teachings, is often described as a field of pure potential from which specific experiences emerge through the act of observation or attention. This field is said to be non-local, not confined to any particular location, and to display the capacity for simultaneous multiplicity and unity. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics, such as the participatory universe model proposed by physicist John Wheeler, suggest that consciousness doesn't just observe a pre-existing reality, but participates in calling forth specific outcomes from a field of possibilities. According to this view, the act of conscious observation doesn't merely reveal what was already there, but helps determine what becomes real. This remains highly speculative territory with no scientific consensus. Many physicists argue that quantum effects are too fragile to influence macroscopic systems like brains, and that consciousness can be fully explained through classical neural processes. Others suggest that the apparent role of observation in quantum mechanics doesn't require consciousness, but can be accounted for through purely physical interactions. Yet the parallels between quantum principles and consciousness continue to intrigue researchers. The quantum field vacuum, far from being empty space, seethes with virtual particles and zero-point energy fluctuations. Some theorists speculate that consciousness might interface with these fundamental fields, accessing information and possibilities that exist at the deepest levels of physical reality. Whether or not consciousness directly involves quantum processes, the quantum revolution has fundamentally altered our understanding of the relationship between mind and matter, observer and observed. It has revealed a universe that is far more participatory, interconnected, and mysterious than classical physics suggested. As you contemplate these possibilities, remember that we're exploring ideas at the very frontier of human understanding. These speculations represent attempts to bridge the explanatory gap between subjective consciousness and objective physical processes. Whether consciousness emerges from classical neural computation, involves quantum processes, or transcends physical description entirely, remains one of the deepest mysteries in science. As our exploration draws toward its conclusion, let's consider where this revolution in consciousness research might lead us. If consciousness does indeed control the brain in ways we're only beginning to understand, if it extends beyond the boundaries of individual skulls, if it participates in the very fabric of reality itself, what might this mean for our future as conscious beings? Brain-computer interface technology is already providing direct evidence of consciousness's capacity to control neural processes and external systems. Paralyzed individuals can control robotic limbs through conscious intention alone. People can learn to modulate their own brain states using real-time neurofeedback. These technologies demonstrate that consciousness has direct causal efficacy in ways that can be measured and harnessed. As these technologies advance, we may develop systems that can amplify conscious control, making it easier for people to regulate their own neural states, enhance cognitive performance, or access altered states of consciousness. We might create interfaces that allow direct consciousness to consciousness communication, transcending the limitations of language and sensory channels. But perhaps more profound than technological advances are the implications for human potential itself. If consciousness has genuine causal power, if your thoughts and intentions can literally shape your brain and influence your reality, then you are far more than a biological machine following predetermined programs. The research we've explored suggests that consciousness might be a fundamental feature of reality rather than an accidental byproduct of neural complexity. This perspective opens up possibilities for human development and transformation that transcend current scientific models. Contemplative traditions have long claimed that consciousness has unlimited potential for development. They describe advanced practitioners who display extraordinary capacities, the ability to control autonomic functions, to access information through non-ordinary means, to influence their environment through focused intention. While these claims require careful scientific investigation, the emerging research on consciousness suggests they may not be as implausible as once assumed. The implications extend beyond individual development to collective human potential. If consciousness is inherently interconnected, if individual awareness participates in larger fields of collective consciousness, then our species' future might depend on our capacity to develop and integrate conscious awareness on a global scale. The challenges facing humanity, climate change, social inequality, technological disruption, might require not just technical solutions, but fundamental shifts in consciousness itself. The research we've explored suggests that such shifts are not only possible, but may be occurring already through the collective practices of millions of individuals working to develop and expand their conscious awareness. As you've journeyed with me through this exploration, you've participated in this very process. Every moment of attention, every conscious choice about where to direct your awareness, every insight or understanding that has emerged has been an example of consciousness exploring and potentially transforming itself. You are not just learning about consciousness, you are consciousness investigating its own nature, using the tools of science and contemplation to peer into the depths of your own being. This investigation isn't merely academic, but deeply personal and potentially transformative. The possibility that consciousness controls the brain, rather than the other way around, invites you to see yourself as a conscious agent with genuine power to shape your neural patterns, your behaviors, your relationships, and your contribution to the larger field of human consciousness. This perspective doesn't deny the importance of the brain or diminish the value of neuroscience research. Instead, it suggests that consciousness and brain exist in a dynamic partnership, with consciousness as the senior partner guiding and directing neural processes toward greater coherence, creativity, and connection. As we conclude this particular exploration, remember that these ideas are not just concepts to think about, but possibilities to explore directly through your own conscious experience. The laboratory of consciousness is always available to you through practices of attention, awareness, and contemplative inquiry. Whether through meditation, creative expression, healing practices, or simply paying closer attention to the miracle of your own awareness, you can participate directly in the greatest adventure of all, consciousness awakening to its own infinite nature and unlimited potential. The journey continues, and you are both the explorer and the territory being explored. In recognizing this, you touch the very heart of what it means to be conscious in a universe where consciousness might be the most fundamental mystery and the most profound creative force. And speaking of profound mysteries, if you're curious about how consciousness might connect to the quantum realm in ways that could revolutionize our understanding of reality itself, you might find our exploration fascinating. Could quantum entanglement be the hidden science behind manifestation. There we venture into quantum territories, where the boundaries between mind and matter become beautifully, mysteriously blurred. As we drift deeper into this exploration, we encounter something that brings the mystery of consciousness into direct contact with the tangible world of technology. Brain-computer interfaces represent perhaps the most compelling evidence yet that consciousness possesses genuine causal power, the ability to reach beyond the confines of neural networks and influence the external world through pure intention. Imagine Sarah, a woman who lost the use of her limbs in an accident, but can now control a robotic arm with nothing more than her thoughts. She focuses her attention on the intention to reach for a glass of water, and sophisticated sensors detect the neural patterns associated with that conscious choice. Within milliseconds, the robotic limb responds, moving with fluid precision to grasp the glass and bring it to her lips. What's remarkable isn't just the technology, but what it reveals about the nature of consciousness itself. Sarah's conscious intention produces specific, reproducible patterns of brain activity that can be decoded and translated into action. Her awareness doesn't just observe these neural patterns, it appears to generate them through the simple act of focused intention. Research in this field has revealed something extraordinary about the plasticity of consciousness-brain interactions. People learning to use brain-computer interfaces often develop enhanced control over their neural patterns within days or weeks. It's as if consciousness has an innate capacity to interface with and modulate brain activity, given the right feedback mechanisms. Dr. Rajesh Rao at the University of Washington has demonstrated that people can learn to control the brain activity of others through brain-to-brain interfaces. One person's conscious intention to move their hand can trigger actual hand movement in another person located across campus. While this involves sophisticated technology to decode and transmit neural signals, it suggests that consciousness might have capacities for connection and influence that extend far beyond what we typically imagine. These technologies work because consciousness appears to have direct access to the neural processes underlying intention and action. When you consciously decide to move your hand right now, that decision involves specific patterns of activity in motor planning areas of your brain. Brain-computer interfaces simply tap into these naturally occurring consciousness-brain interactions and redirect them toward external devices. But perhaps most intriguingly, some researchers have found that people can learn to produce brain patterns associated with movements they've never actually performed. Paralyzed individuals can generate neural signatures for complex actions their bodies haven't experienced in years. This suggests that consciousness maintains access to motor intentions and plans even when the physical pathways for executing them have been severed. Take a moment to consider what this means for your understanding of your own consciousness. Right now, as you listen to these words, your awareness is simultaneously monitoring multiple streams of information while maintaining the coherent sense of being you. This same consciousness that seems so ephemeral and intangible can, with the right interface, directly control external machines with precision that rivals normal motor control. The relationship between consciousness and healing extends far beyond the placebo effects we explored earlier. Emerging research reveals that conscious practices can trigger profound changes in biological systems through mechanisms that challenge our understanding of how mind and body interact. Consider the phenomenon of spontaneous remission in cancer patients. While rare, these cases involve people whose tumours disappear or dramatically shrink without conventional medical treatment. When researchers investigate these cases, they often find that patients had undergone significant psychological or spiritual transformations prior to their physical healing. Dr. Kelly Turner's research on radical remission cases has identified common factors among people who experienced unexpected recoveries. These include fundamental shifts in consciousness, such as releasing suppressed emotions, deepening spiritual connection, and taking control of their health decisions. While correlation doesn't prove causation, these patterns suggest that consciousness might play a more active role in healing than conventional medicine typically acknowledges. Psychoneuroimmunology, the study of how psychological processes affect the nervous and immune systems, has revealed intricate pathways through which consciousness can influence physical health. Chronic stress and negative emotional states can suppress immune function, increase inflammation, and accelerate cellular aging. Conversely, practices that cultivate positive emotional states and reduce stress can reverse these processes. The emerging field of epigenetics shows how environmental factors, including psychological states, can influence gene expression without changing the underlying DNA sequence. Studies have found that meditation practice can influence the expression of genes involved in inflammation, cellular aging, and stress response. Your conscious engagement with contemplative practices appears to literally reprogram how your genes function. Dr. Herbert Benson's research on the relaxation response has demonstrated that simple, conscious practices can produce measurable physiological changes within minutes. Blood pressure decreases, heart rate variability increases, and stress hormone levels drop through nothing more than conscious attention to breath and relaxation. These aren't just temporary states, but can become stable traits with regular practice. Even more remarkably, some studies suggest that consciousness-based healing practices might influence others at a distance. Research on distant healing and intercessory prayer remains controversial, with mixed results and ongoing debates about methodology. However, some well-designed studies have found statistically significant effects of distant intention on biological systems, from bacterial cultures to human patients. These findings don't prove that consciousness can heal through mysterious, non-physical mechanisms, but they do suggest that the relationship between consciousness, intention, and biological processes might be far more complex and far-reaching than conventional medical models typically acknowledge. As you reflect on your own experiences with healing, you might recognize moments when conscious practices, positive expectations, or deep relaxation seem to contribute to physical recovery. These personal experiences, combined with emerging scientific research, point toward a model of health that acknowledges consciousness as an active participant in the healing process. The mystery of creativity provides another window into consciousness's capacity to access information and possibilities that seem to transcend ordinary mental processes. Throughout history, breakthrough innovations in science, art, and technology have often emerged through sudden insights that appear to come from beyond the reach of logical reasoning. The mathematician Srinivasa Ramanujan claimed that mathematical theorems were revealed to him in dreams by the goddess Namagiri. His notebooks, filled with complex formulas that he couldn't always prove, but which were later verified by other mathematicians, suggest a form of consciousness that could access mathematical truths through non-ordinary means. Tesla described receiving complete visions of his inventions, able to visualize complex machines in perfect detail before building them physically. He claimed to test and refine these mental models, running them in his imagination for weeks before ever touching metal or wire. His consciousness seemed capable of accessing and manipulating information about physical systems with extraordinary precision. Modern neuroscience research on creativity has revealed that breakthrough insights often emerge during states of relaxed awareness rather than focused concentration. The default mode network, active during rest and daydreaming, appears to make novel connections between disparate areas of knowledge and experience. Studies using brain imaging have found that creative insights are often preceded by a brief moment of reduced activity across multiple brain regions, followed by a sudden burst of high-frequency activity, particularly in the right temporal lobe. It's as if consciousness momentarily opens to receive information from sources beyond ordinary thinking processes. Dr. Arne Dietrich's research on the neuroscience of creativity has identified what he calls transient hypofrontality during creative states. The prefrontal cortex, normally active in critical thinking and self-censorship, becomes less active, allowing other brain regions to make connections that would typically be filtered out. This suggests that creativity involves consciousness temporarily suspending its normal constraints to access broader fields of possibility. The phenomenon of synchronicity, where meaningful coincidences seem to cluster around creative projects, has been noted by artists and inventors throughout history. While these experiences can't be easily studied scientifically, they point toward a relationship between consciousness and creativity that might involve connections to larger patterns of information and meaning. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious suggests that individual consciousness might tap into shared pools of archetypal knowledge and imagery. Modern artists and writers often describe accessing images, stories, or insights that feel as though they come from beyond their personal experience and knowledge. Take a breath and consider your own creative experiences. You might recognize moments when your best ideas seem to arrive unbidden, when solutions to problems appear during relaxed states rather than focused effort. These experiences suggest that consciousness has access to sources of information and insight that transcend the boundaries of what you consciously know or have experienced. As we venture into increasingly speculative territory, some researchers and theorists have proposed that consciousness might interface with information fields that extend throughout the cosmos. While these ideas remain highly speculative and lack scientific consensus, they offer intriguing possibilities for understanding consciousness's apparent capacity to access information through non-ordinary means. The physicist David Bohm proposed that reality might have both an explicate order, the world of separate objects and events that we normally perceive, and an implicate order, a deeper level where everything is interconnected and information is distributed throughout the whole. According to this view, consciousness might have the capacity to access this implicate order, gaining insights and information that aren't available through ordinary sensory channels. Rupert Sheldrake's controversial theory of morphic resonance suggests that similar forms across space and time might be connected through morphic fields that carry information about patterns and behaviors. While this theory lacks mainstream scientific acceptance, it attempts to explain phenomena like the apparent ability of animals to navigate across vast distances and the rapid spread of learned behaviors through populations. Some interpretations of quantum field theory suggest that information might be a fundamental feature of reality at the deepest level. The quantum field vacuum, far from being empty space, contains virtual particles and zero-point energy fluctuations that some theorists speculate might carry information. If consciousness could interface with these quantum fields, it might explain apparent abilities to access information through non-local means. Research on remote viewing, the claimed ability to gather information about distant locations through consciousness alone, has produced intriguing but controversial results. Studies conducted by Stanford Research Institute and other institutions have found statistical effects that exceed chance, though the practical significance and underlying mechanisms remain debated. The Global Consciousness Project, run by Princeton University, has attempted to detect correlations between global events and the output of random number generators distributed around the world. Researchers report statistical deviations from randomness during major events like the September 11th attacks, suggesting possible connections between collective consciousness and physical systems. However, these findings remain controversial and require further replication. These ideas push far beyond current scientific understanding and should be approached with appropriate skepticism. There's no scientific consensus that consciousness can access non-local information fields, and many of the reported phenomena might be explained through conventional means, including coincidence, selective memory, and experimental artifacts. Yet the persistence of such reports across cultures and throughout history suggests that consciousness might have capacities we don't fully understand. Whether these involve accessing information fields, quantum processes, or simply more sophisticated forms of pattern recognition and intuition remains an open question. As you contemplate these possibilities, remember that we're exploring the very edges of human knowledge and speculation. These ideas represent attempts to understand consciousness's apparent capacity to transcend the limitations of ordinary sensory and cognitive processes, but they require much more research before they can be accepted as scientific fact. Individual consciousness doesn't exist in isolation, but emerges within networks of relationship and connection that extend throughout human society and potentially beyond. Research in social neuroscience reveals that our brains are fundamentally designed for connection, with neural systems dedicated to understanding others' minds, sharing emotions, and coordinating behavior. When people engage in synchronized activities like chanting, dancing, or even walking together, their brainwaves begin to synchronize as well. This neural entrainment creates a form of collective coherence, where individual awareness becomes part of a larger, shared field of experience. Studies have found that groups in neural synchrony display enhanced cooperation, empathy, and collective problem-solving abilities. The phenomenon of collective effervescence, first described by sociologist Emil Durkheim, refers to the energy and harmony that emerges when groups come together in shared purpose or celebration. Modern neuroscience suggests this isn't just a metaphor, but involves measurable changes in brain activity and physiological coherence among participants. Research on collective meditation practices has found intriguing correlations with broader social outcomes. Studies have reported associations between group meditation and reduced crime rates, decreased accident rates, and improved social harmony in surrounding communities. While these findings remain controversial and require further replication, they suggest that collective consciousness practices might influence social systems in ways that transcend individual effects. The Maharishi effect, named after Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, refers to the claimed phenomenon where group meditation practices influence social coherence in the surrounding population. While proponents cite numerous studies showing correlations between meditation, group size, and various social indicators, critics argue that these studies suffer from methodological flaws and selection bias. The scientific community remains divided on the validity of these claims. Dr. Lynn McTaggart's research on intention experiments has explored whether groups of people focusing their conscious intention on specific targets can produce measurable effects. Her studies have reported small but statistically significant effects on everything from bacterial growth to seed germination. However, these findings require independent replication and remain outside mainstream scientific acceptance. The internet and social media have created unprecedented opportunities for collective consciousness phenomena to emerge at global scales. Social movements can now organize and spread with remarkable speed, creating waves of collective awareness and action that transcend geographic boundaries. While these are mediated by technology rather than direct consciousness-to-consciousness connection, they demonstrate the potential for individual awareness to participate in larger collective fields. Some researchers have proposed that humanity might be evolving toward greater collective coherence and shared consciousness. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin's concept of the noosphere envisions a sphere of human thought that encompasses the planet, gradually evolving toward greater unity and complexity. While speculative, this vision resonates with observable trends toward global communication, shared challenges, and collective problem-solving. As you consider your own participation in collective consciousness phenomena, you might recognize moments when you felt part of something larger than your individual awareness, whether in group meditation, collective celebration, social movements, or even online communities. These experiences suggest that consciousness might be inherently relational and participatory rather than purely individual. Consciousness isn't static, but appears to develop and evolve both within individual lifetimes and across historical periods. Research in developmental psychology reveals how awareness unfolds through predictable stages, each characterized by increasing complexity, integration, and capacity for perspective taking. Jean Piaget's research on cognitive development showed how children's consciousness evolves from simple sensor-emotor awareness to formal operational thinking, capable of abstract reasoning and hypothetical scenarios. These aren't just changes in knowledge, but fundamental transformations in how consciousness organizes and interprets experience. Later researchers like Robert Keegan and Ken Wilber have extended developmental models into adulthood, proposing that consciousness can continue evolving throughout life toward greater complexity, integration, and transpersonal awareness. These models suggest that what we typically consider normal adult consciousness might represent just one stage in a longer developmental trajectory. Contemplative traditions have long described advanced stages of consciousness development that transcend ordinary ego-centered awareness. These include states of expanded identity, direct insight into the nature of reality, and capacities for influencing consciousness and physical processes that seem extraordinary from conventional perspectives. Modern research on contemplative practitioners has begun to validate some of these claims. Long-term meditators show brain changes that suggest fundamental alterations in how consciousness processes self-related information, emotional regulation, and awareness itself. Some display capacities for controlling autonomic functions, accessing non-ordinary states of consciousness, and maintaining awareness during deep sleep states. The phenomenon of near-death experiences provides another window into consciousness's developmental potential. People who have been clinically dead often report profound expansions of awareness, encounters with deceased relatives, life reviews, and direct knowing that transcends ordinary cognitive processes. While the interpretation of these experiences remains debated, they consistently involve descriptions of consciousness that transcends normal limitations. Dr. Kenneth Ring's research on near-death experiences has found that people who have these encounters often undergo lasting personality changes characterized by increased empathy, reduced materialism, and enhanced spiritual awareness. These changes suggest that consciousness has the potential for rapid transformative development under certain conditions. Historical analysis reveals apparent evolution in collective human consciousness over time. The development of language, mathematics, science, and democratic institutions represents progressive expansions in humanity's capacity for abstract thinking, moral reasoning, and cooperative organization. Some theorists propose that we're witnessing accelerating evolution in collective consciousness through global communication, shared challenges, and emerging planetary awareness. The psychologist Claire Graves proposed that human consciousness evolves through predictable stages in response to life conditions and challenges. According to his research, we're currently witnessing the emergence of integral consciousness that can hold multiple perspectives simultaneously and work with paradox and complexity in ways that earlier stages couldn't manage. As you reflect on your own consciousness development, you might recognize how your awareness has expanded and deepened over time. Experiences that once seemed overwhelming might now feel manageable. Perspectives that once seemed foreign might now feel accessible. This ongoing development suggests that consciousness has inherent potential for growth and transformation that extends throughout life and potentially beyond. As our exploration draws toward its natural conclusion, we find ourselves not with final answers, but with deeper, more profound questions. The evidence we've examined suggests that consciousness might be far more fundamental, far more powerful, and far more mysterious than conventional scientific models have assumed. If consciousness does indeed control the brain, rather than merely emerging from it, what are the implications for human potential? If awareness can influence biological processes, interface with technology, and possibly connect with larger fields of information and meaning, what does this suggest about the nature of reality itself? The hard problem of consciousness, the question of how subjective experience arises from objective physical processes, might need to be reframed entirely. Instead of asking how the brain creates consciousness, perhaps we should be exploring how consciousness uses the brain, how awareness interfaces with neural networks to create the rich tapestry of human experience. This shift in perspective doesn't diminish the importance of neuroscience research, but suggests it might be studying one half of a deeper partnership. The brain provides the instrument through which consciousness can express itself in the physical world, while consciousness provides the creative, organizing intelligence that guides neural processes toward coherence, complexity, and connection. The quantum nature of reality adds another layer of mystery to this exploration. If consciousness does interface with quantum processes, if awareness plays a role in the collapse of possibility into actuality, then the boundary between mind and matter becomes far more fluid and participatory than classical physics suggested. But perhaps the deepest mystery isn't about mechanisms, but about meaning. What is consciousness for? Why does the universe give rise to awareness that can reflect upon itself, create beauty, seek truth, and contemplate its own existence? These questions push beyond science into philosophy, spirituality, and the realm of ultimate meaning. Some traditions suggest that consciousness is not just an accidental byproduct of cosmic evolution, but its very purpose. According to this view, the universe is consciousness exploring itself through countless forms and perspectives, each conscious being a unique window through which cosmic awareness comes to know itself more completely. Whether or not such grand purposes exist, the research we've explored reveals consciousness to be far more than a passive observer of reality. It appears to be an active participant in the ongoing creation of experience, capable of influencing biological processes, interfacing with technology, accessing information through non-ordinary means, and participating in collective fields of awareness and intention. As you sit with these ideas, notice how your own consciousness responds to them. Some concepts might resonate deeply, creating a sense of recognition or excitement. Others might feel foreign or challenging to your current worldview. This very process of evaluation, integration, and meaning-making demonstrates consciousness actively engaging with new information and possibilities. The implications extend far beyond academic understanding into the realm of practical life. If consciousness has genuine causal power, if your awareness can influence your brain, your health, your creativity, and your connections with others, then you bear a profound responsibility for how you direct and develop that consciousness. This isn't about magical thinking or the belief that positive thoughts alone can overcome all challenges. Rather, it's about recognizing consciousness as a creative force that requires the same careful attention and skillful development that you might give to physical fitness, intellectual learning, or artistic practice. As we reach the natural conclusion of this particular exploration, remember that every insight, every moment of wonder, every question that has arisen during our time together demonstrates the very phenomenon we've been investigating. You are consciousness exploring its own nature, using the tools of science and contemplation to peer into the depths of awareness itself. The research we've examined represents just the beginning of what promises to be a revolutionary transformation in our understanding of consciousness, brain function, and human potential. We stand at the threshold of discoveries that could fundamentally alter not just neuroscience but our entire conception of what it means to be conscious beings in a conscious universe. Whether consciousness controls the brain through classical neural mechanisms, quantum processes, or something even more mysterious, the evidence points toward awareness as an active, creative force rather than a passive byproduct of neural computation. This perspective invites you to see yourself not as a biological machine following predetermined programs, but as a conscious agent capable of genuine choice, creativity, and transformation. The practical implications of this understanding extend into every aspect of life. Your conscious practices of attention, intention, and awareness are not merely personal experiences, but potentially influential forces that can shape your neural patterns, your physical health, your creative capacity, and your connections with others. As you continue your own exploration of consciousness, remember that the laboratory of awareness is always available to you through practices of meditation, contemplative inquiry, creative expression, and conscious attention to the miracle of your own awareness. You can participate directly in the ongoing investigation of consciousness's nature and potential. The questions we've explored tonight don't have final answers, and perhaps that's precisely the point. Consciousness might be less like a problem to be solved and more like an infinite mystery to be lived, explored, and celebrated. In recognizing this, you touch the very heart of what it means to be conscious in a universe where awareness itself might be the most fundamental creative force. the journey of consciousness exploring itself through science, philosophy, and direct experience continues to unfold. You are both the investigator and the territory being investigated, both the question and the questioner. In this recognition lies perhaps the deepest insight of all, that consciousness is not something you have, but something you are, not a possession, but your deepest identity as awareness itself. And if you're drawn to explore how consciousness might connect with the quantum realm in ways that blur the boundaries between mind and matter, between intention and manifestation, you might find our previous exploration particularly fascinating. Could quantum entanglement be the hidden science behind manifestation? There we venture into quantum territories, where the relationship between consciousness and physical reality becomes beautifully, mysteriously intertwined. This has been your gentle guide through the landscape of consciousness research, reminding you that in a universe where awareness might control the very brain from which it appears to emerge, you are far more mysterious, far more powerful, and far more connected than you may have ever imagined. Sleep well and dream deeply of the infinite possibilities that consciousness holds. As we drift toward the culmination of our exploration, we encounter perhaps the most profound intersection between consciousness and reality, the mysterious realm where the act of observation itself appears to influence what becomes real. This isn't metaphysical speculation, but documented quantum physics, where the simple act of conscious observation seems to collapse infinite possibilities into definite outcomes. The double-slit experiment, one of the most elegant and disturbing demonstrations in all of science, reveals something extraordinary about the relationship between consciousness and physical reality. When particles like electrons or photons are fired through two parallel slits toward a detector screen, something remarkable happens. If no measurement is made to determine which slit each particle passes through, they behave like waves, creating an interference pattern that suggests each particle somehow travels through both slits simultaneously. But the moment we place a detector to observe which path each particle takes, the wave-like behavior vanishes. The particles begin acting like discrete objects, each taking a definite path through one slit or the other. The very act of observation appears to force reality to choose a specific outcome from among multiple possibilities. What makes this particularly intriguing for our exploration of consciousness is that the observer effect doesn't seem to depend on the physical disruption of measurement devices. Even when scientists use detection methods that barely interact with the particles, the mere potential for observation appears sufficient to collapse the quantum superposition. It's as if reality responds not to physical interference, but to the presence of conscious observation itself. Take a moment to consider what this might mean. In the quantum realm, it appears that consciousness doesn't just passively observe reality, it participates in determining what becomes real. While this effect has only been definitively demonstrated at microscopic scales, some interpretations suggest it points toward a universe where consciousness plays a fundamental role in the unfolding of events. Dr. Henry Stapp, a quantum physicist at Berkeley, has proposed that consciousness serves as the mechanism through which quantum possibilities collapse into classical reality. According to this interpretation, every moment of conscious observation represents a choice point where the universe selects one outcome from infinite possibilities. Your awareness doesn't just witness reality, it helps create it through the very act of observation. This remains a highly speculative interpretation with no scientific consensus. Many physicists argue that quantum effects are confined to microscopic systems and don't influence macroscopic reality in ways that consciousness can access. The observer effect might simply reflect the unavoidable physical interaction between measuring devices and quantum systems, with no special role for consciousness required. Yet the parallels between quantum mechanics and consciousness continue to fascinate researchers. Both involve the mysterious collapse of multiple possibilities into single outcomes. Both seem to transcend classical notions of locality and causation. Both challenge our assumptions about the relationship between observer and observed. As you reflect on your own experience of observation and choice, you might recognize something that resonates with quantum principles. Each moment of conscious awareness involves selecting certain aspects of experience, while others fade into the background. Your attention appears to literally highlight certain possibilities, while allowing others to remain potential rather than actual. Whether this represents a genuine connection to quantum processes or simply a useful metaphor remains an open question. But the observer effect reminds us that, even in physics, the most fundamental science, consciousness occupies a special and mysterious role that we are only beginning to understand. The observer effect leads us directly into one of the deepest puzzles in quantum mechanics, the measurement problem. This isn't just a technical issue for physicists, but a profound question about the nature of reality itself and consciousness's role in determining what exists. According to the mathematics of quantum mechanics, particles exist in superposition states, embodying all possible properties simultaneously until measurement collapses them into definite outcomes. But this raises a fundamental question. What constitutes a measurement? When exactly does the collapse occur? And what role does consciousness play in this process? The problem becomes even more puzzling when we consider measurement chains. If a quantum particle is measured by a detector, which is read by a computer, which is observed by a human consciousness, at which point does the superposition collapse? Does it happen at the initial detector interaction, or only when consciousness enters the chain? Eugene Wigner, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, famously proposed that consciousness might be necessary for wave function collapse. In his thought experiment known as Wigner's Friend, he imagined a conscious observer inside a sealed laboratory measuring a quantum system. From Wigner's perspective, outside the lab, both the quantum system and his friend remain in superposition until he opens the lab and observes the result. This suggests that consciousness might play a special role in determining when quantum possibilities become classical realities. This interpretation remains highly controversial, with most physicists favouring explanations that don't require conscious observers. Decoherence theory, for example, suggests that quantum superpositions naturally collapse through interaction with environmental factors, with no special role for consciousness required. The many worlds interpretation avoids collapse entirely by proposing that all possibilities occur in parallel universes. Yet the measurement problem persists, highlighting the strange relationship between observation and reality in quantum mechanics. Some interpretations suggest that information, rather than consciousness per se, might be the key factor. When information about a quantum system becomes available to the environment, regardless of whether anyone consciously observes it, the superposition collapses. Dr. John Wheeler's concept of a participatory universe takes this idea even further. He proposed that reality might be fundamentally participatory, with observation not just revealing what was already there, but helping to determine what becomes real. In this view, the universe is engaged in a cosmic conversation between potential and actual, with consciousness serving as one of the voices in that dialogue. While these ideas remain speculative and lack scientific consensus, they point toward a universe where consciousness and reality exist in a more intimate relationship than classical physics suggested. The measurement problem reminds us that even our most successful physical theories leave room for mystery, particularly regarding consciousness's role in the fundamental nature of reality. As you contemplate these possibilities, notice how your own consciousness seems to select certain aspects of experience from a vast field of potential awareness. Right now, you could focus on the sound of my voice, the sensation of breathing, thoughts about these ideas, or awareness of your environment. Each choice of attention seems to bring certain possibilities into focus, while allowing others to remain in the background of potential experience. Perhaps even more mysterious than the observer effect is a variation known as the delayed choice experiment, which seems to suggest that conscious observation can retroactively determine the nature of reality. This isn't science fiction, but documented quantum physics that challenges our most basic assumptions about time, causation, and the role of consciousness in shaping reality. In the delayed choice version of the double-slit experiment, the decision whether to observe which path a particle takes is made after the particle has already passed through the slits, but before it hits the detector screen. Remarkably, the particle's behaviour seems to depend on this future observation choice. If the experimenter decides to measure the path, the particle behaves as though it took a definite route through one slit or the other. If no path measurement is made, it displays wave-like interference, as though it passed through both slits simultaneously. This appears to violate our normal understanding of causation, suggesting that a future conscious choice can retroactively determine the past behaviour of a particle. It's as if reality remains undecided about what actually happened until consciousness makes an observation choice, even if that choice comes later in time. Dr. John Wheeler, who proposed this experiment, suggested it reveals something profound about the nature of reality itself. According to his interpretation, the universe might not have a definite past until conscious observers make measurements that retroactively determine what occurred. The act of observation doesn't just reveal reality, it helps create the history of what happened. Quantum eraser experiments push this mystery even further. In these setups, information about a particle's path is first recorded, causing wave-like behaviour to disappear. But then the information is erased before anyone observes it. When the path information is erased, the wave-like interference pattern returns, as though the particle retroactively decided to behave like a wave rather than a particle. These experiments have been performed with increasing sophistication over decades, with results consistently confirming the strange predictions of quantum mechanics. The implications are profound and deeply puzzling. They suggest that reality might be far more fluid and participatory than our everyday experience suggests, with consciousness playing a role in determining not just what we observe, but what actually happened. Some interpretations propose that these effects reflect the fundamental nature of information and observation rather than consciousness per se. The universe might be structured in such a way that information about quantum events only becomes definite when it can no longer be changed or erased. Consciousness enters the picture as the ultimate information processor, the system that integrates and interprets quantum information in ways that create coherent experience. Other interpretations suggest that these experiments reveal the non-local nature of reality itself. If quantum systems can be entangled across space, perhaps they can also be correlated across time, with future observations influencing past events through quantum mechanical connections that transcend ordinary causation. While no scientific consensus exists on the correct interpretation of these experiments, they consistently demonstrate that reality behaves in ways that challenge classical assumptions about the relationship between consciousness, observation, and physical events. They suggest that the universe might be far more participatory and consciousness-dependent than we typically imagine. As you consider these possibilities, reflect on your own experience of memory and decision-making. Sometimes insights about past events seem to emerge only when you're ready to understand them. Sometimes the meaning of experiences becomes clear only in retrospect. While these psychological phenomena don't necessarily involve quantum mechanics, they might reflect deeper principles about how consciousness participates in the ongoing creation of experienced reality. As quantum physics has evolved, many researchers have come to view information, rather than matter or energy, as the fundamental constituent of reality. This perspective, sometimes called it from bit, following John Wheeler's famous phrase, suggests that the universe might be better understood as an information processing system than as a collection of particles moving through space. If reality is fundamentally informational, then consciousness might serve as something like the universe's operating system, the process through which information becomes organized into coherent experience. This isn't just a metaphor, but a framework that some physicists and information theorists are exploring seriously. Dr. Claude Shannon's work on information theory revealed that information can be precisely quantified, and that the processing of information follows mathematical laws just as fundamental as those governing energy and matter. When applied to quantum mechanics, information theory suggests that quantum states are essentially packages of information that become definite through measurement and observation. The holographic principle in physics proposes that all the information contained within a volume of space can be encoded on its two-dimensional boundary. This suggests that what we perceive as three-dimensional reality might be projections from information encoded at a more fundamental level. If consciousness serves as the process that interprets this encoded information, it might literally participate in projecting experienced reality from deeper informational structures. Integrated information theory, developed by Dr. Giulio Tononi, attempts to quantify consciousness based on the integrated information processing that occurs within complex systems. According to this theory, consciousness corresponds to the amount of integrated information that a system generates through its internal connections and processes. This framework suggests that consciousness and information processing are intimately linked at the most fundamental level. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics, such as cubism, quantum Bayesianism, propose that quantum states don't represent objective reality, but rather the information that conscious agents have about their potential experiences. In this view, quantum mechanics is fundamentally about how conscious observers update their information and expectations based on measurement outcomes. The digital physics hypothesis takes information-based models of reality even further, suggesting that the universe might be literally computational, with physical processes corresponding to information processing operations. If this is correct, then consciousness might represent a particular type of computation that generates self-aware information processing systems. While these ideas remain highly speculative and lack scientific consensus, They point toward a universe where consciousness and information are intimately connected. Rather than consciousness being an accidental byproduct of complex matter, it might be the fundamental process through which information becomes organized into coherent, experienced reality. Take a breath and consider how this might relate to your own experience. Every moment of consciousness involves processing vast amounts of information, sensory inputs, memories, thoughts, emotions, and integrating them into a coherent sense of present moment awareness. Your consciousness doesn't just receive this information passively, but actively selects, organizes, and interprets it in ways that create your unique perspective on reality. If consciousness does serve as reality's information processing system, then your awareness isn't separate from the universe, but represents one of the ways the universe knows itself. Each moment of conscious experience might be the universe processing information about its own state through the particular window of your awareness. While quantum effects were long thought to be too delicate to survive in biological systems, emerging research in quantum biology reveals that life has evolved sophisticated mechanisms for harnessing and protecting quantum processes. This discovery opens fascinating possibilities for understanding how consciousness might interface with quantum reality through biological systems. Photosynthesis, one of the most important processes on Earth, appears to use quantum coherence to achieve its remarkable efficiency. When light energy is captured by plant molecules, it explores multiple pathways simultaneously through quantum superposition before collapsing into the most efficient route for energy transfer. This quantum-assisted process helps explain how plants can convert sunlight to chemical energy with near-perfect efficiency. Bird navigation provides another example of quantum biology in action. Many migratory birds appear to use quantum entanglement in their visual systems to detect Earth's magnetic field. Cryptochrome proteins in bird retinas may maintain entangled electron pairs that are sensitive to magnetic field direction, essentially giving birds a quantum compass for navigation across vast distances. Even more intriguingly, some researchers have found evidence of quantum effects in neural microtubules, the structural components within brain cells. Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose have proposed that consciousness might emerge from quantum processes within these cellular structures, though this theory remains highly controversial and lacks scientific consensus. The discovery of quantum effects in biological systems doesn't prove that consciousness involves quantum mechanics, but it does demonstrate that quantum processes can persist in complex, warm, noisy biological environments. This challenges earlier assumptions that quantum effects would be too fragile to influence biological functions, including, potentially, those involved in consciousness. Research on anesthesia has revealed intriguing connections between consciousness and quantum processes. Some anesthetic drugs appear to disrupt quantum coherence in microtubules, and the concentrations required to eliminate consciousness correlate with those needed to collapse quantum states in these cellular structures. While this correlation doesn't prove causation, it suggests possible connections between quantum processes and conscious awareness. Dr. Henry Stapp has proposed that quantum mechanics provides a framework for understanding how consciousness might influence brain function through what he calls quantum interactive dualism. According to this speculative model, consciousness interfaces with neural quantum processes to influence the probability of different neural firing patterns, providing a mechanism for mental causation that doesn't violate physical laws. Other researchers have explored whether quantum entanglement might play a role in the binding problem, how the brain integrates information from different sensory modalities and processing areas into unified conscious experience. If neural processes can maintain quantum correlations, they might provide a mechanism for the instantaneous integration that conscious unity seems to require. These ideas remain highly speculative, and most neuroscientists believe that consciousness can be fully explained through classical neural processes without invoking quantum mechanics. The brain might simply use quantum effects for certain functions, while generating consciousness through purely classical mechanisms. Yet the discovery of quantum biology opens new possibilities for understanding how consciousness might interface with the quantum realm. Even if consciousness doesn't directly involve quantum processes, it emerges from biological systems that demonstrably use quantum effects for various functions. This suggests a more intimate relationship between life, consciousness, and quantum reality than was previously imagined. As you reflect on these possibilities, consider how your own consciousness seems to integrate vast amounts of information into unified experience. Each moment of awareness somehow binds together sensory inputs, memories, emotions, and thoughts into a coherent sense of present moment experience. Whether this integration involves quantum processes or classical neural mechanisms, it represents one of the most remarkable phenomena in the known universe. As we approach the conclusion of our exploration, it's worth considering where this revolution in consciousness research might lead us. Scientists around the world are developing new technologies and methodologies for studying consciousness with unprecedented precision, potentially bringing us closer to understanding its fundamental nature and its relationship to physical reality. Advanced brain imaging technologies are revealing the neural correlates of consciousness in ever greater detail. New techniques like high-density EEG, functional near-infrared spectroscopy, and emerging methods for detecting quantum effects in biological systems may soon provide direct evidence for or against quantum theories of consciousness. Brain-computer interfaces are becoming increasingly sophisticated, potentially offering new ways to study how consciousness interfaces with neural processes. As these technologies advance, they may provide direct evidence for consciousness's causal efficacy by allowing people to control external systems through pure intention with increasing precision and sophistication. Artificial intelligence research is approaching the question of machine consciousness from multiple angles. As AI systems become more sophisticated, they may help us understand which aspects of information processing are necessary and sufficient for conscious experience. Some researchers are already exploring whether current AI systems might possess rudimentary forms of consciousness, or whether future systems might develop conscious awareness. The Global Consciousness Project and similar initiatives are attempting to detect correlations between human consciousness and physical systems on a global scale. While results remain controversial, advancing technology may soon provide more definitive tests of whether collective human consciousness can influence physical processes at measurable scales. Quantum technologies are advancing rapidly, potentially opening new possibilities for testing quantum theories of consciousness. Quantum computers, quantum sensors, and other quantum technologies may soon be sophisticated enough to detect quantum effects in biological systems if they exist, or to rule them out definitively. Research on psychedelic substances is providing new insights into the neural correlates of consciousness and the range of possible conscious states. Studies with psilocybin, LSD, and DMT are revealing how alterations in brain connectivity can produce profound changes in conscious experience, potentially illuminating the relationship between neural processes and awareness. The development of increasingly sophisticated virtual and augmented reality systems is creating new possibilities for studying consciousness in controlled environments. These technologies may allow researchers to manipulate conscious experience in precise ways while monitoring neural activity, potentially revealing causal relationships between consciousness and brain function. As these research programs advance, we may be approaching breakthrough discoveries that fundamentally alter our understanding of consciousness, its relationship to physical reality, and its role in the universe. We stand at what may be a pivotal moment in human understanding, where the deepest mysteries about the nature of awareness might finally yield to scientific investigation. The implications of such discoveries would extend far beyond academic curiosity. Understanding consciousness's true nature and capabilities could revolutionize medicine, technology, education, and our fundamental conception of human potential. It might reveal capacities for healing, creativity, and connection that we've barely begun to explore. Whether consciousness emerges from classical neural processes, involves quantum mechanics, or transcends physical description entirely. The research we've explored suggests that awareness is far more fundamental and far more powerful than conventional scientific models have typically acknowledged. As we reach the natural conclusion of our journey through the landscape of consciousness research, we find ourselves in the presence of an eternal mystery that deepens rather than resolves with each new discovery. Perhaps this is exactly as it should be. Perhaps consciousness is not a problem to be solved, but an infinite mystery to be lived, explored, and celebrated. Throughout our exploration, we've encountered evidence suggesting that consciousness might control the brain rather than simply emerging from it, that awareness might interface with quantum processes in ways we're only beginning to understand, and that the observer effect in physics might reflect a universe where consciousness participates in the ongoing creation of reality. We've explored how brain-computer interfaces demonstrate consciousness's direct causal power, how contemplative practices can literally reshape neural structure and function, and how the global workspace of consciousness serves as a control system that determines which information becomes conscious and influences behavior. We've ventured into speculative territories where consciousness might interface with information fields, participate in collective awareness, and continue evolving toward greater complexity and integration throughout individual lifetimes and across historical periods. Yet for all our scientific investigation and philosophical speculation, the deepest mystery remains. What is it like to be conscious? What is the nature of that inner light of awareness that illuminates every moment of your experience? How does consciousness recognize itself through the very thoughts and insights that have emerged during our time together? Science can map neural correlates, measure quantum effects, and develop increasingly sophisticated theories about consciousness's mechanisms and functions. But the actual fact of being aware, the subjective first-person experience of consciousness itself, remains as mysterious and immediate as ever. This isn't a limitation of science, but perhaps a reflection of consciousness's unique nature. Unlike other phenomena that can be observed from the outside, consciousness can only be known from within. You are the only one who can experience your awareness directly, and that experience is both utterly familiar and completely mysterious. The research we've explored suggests that this inner mystery might be far more powerful and fundamental than we've typically assumed. If consciousness does control brain function, interface with quantum processes, and participate in the creation of experienced reality, then your awareness represents one of the most remarkable and influential phenomena in the known universe. But perhaps more important than understanding consciousness's mechanisms is recognizing its presence. Right now, as these final thoughts arise in awareness, you have direct access to the very phenomenon we've been investigating. You are consciousness exploring itself, awareness studying its own nature, the universe coming to know itself through your unique perspective. This recognition transforms our entire exploration from an academic exercise into something far more intimate and immediate. You're not learning about consciousness from the outside, but recognizing it from within. Every insight, every moment of wonder, every question that has arisen represents consciousness awakening to its own infinite nature. Whether consciousness controls the brain through classical or quantum mechanisms, whether it emerges from neural complexity or represents a fundamental feature of reality, you are the living proof of its existence and the direct beneficiary of its capacities. Your ability to think, feel, choose, create, and connect emerges from and through the miracle of conscious awareness. As you continue your journey beyond this particular exploration, remember that the laboratory of consciousness is always available to you. Through practices of attention, contemplation, creativity, and compassionate connection with others, you can participate directly in the ongoing investigation of awareness itself. The questions we've explored don't have final answers, and perhaps that's exactly right. Consciousness might be less like a puzzle to be solved and more like an infinite ocean to be explored. Each new discovery reveals greater depths and vaster horizons. Each moment of awareness opens onto mysteries that stretch beyond the edge of understanding. In recognizing this, you touch something profound about the nature of existence itself. You are not separate from the mystery of consciousness, but its most intimate expression. You are awareness itself, temporarily focused through the lens of individual experience, participating in the universe's ongoing exploration of its own nature. The research continues, the questions deepen, and consciousness keeps awakening to itself through countless forms and perspectives. You are part of that awakening, a unique window through which cosmic awareness comes to know itself more completely. In this recognition lies perhaps the deepest discovery of all, that consciousness is not something you have, but something you are, not a possession, but your deepest identity as awareness itself. And if you're curious about how consciousness might connect with quantum processes in ways that could bridge the gap between intention and reality, between mind and matter, you might find our previous exploration particularly intriguing. Could quantum entanglement be the hidden science behind manifestation? There, we venture into quantum territories where the boundaries between consciousness and physical reality become beautifully, mysteriously intertwined. This has been your contemplative guide through the evolving landscape of consciousness research, gently reminding you that in a universe where awareness might control the very brain from which it appears to emerge, you are far more mysterious, far more powerful, and far more connected than you might have ever imagined. Rest well in the infinite mystery of your own aware presence. Throughout human history, two seemingly separate streams of inquiry have flowed through our collective understanding. One stream consists of contemplative traditions that have explored the nature of consciousness through direct experience, developing sophisticated practices for investigating awareness itself. The other stream consists of scientific investigation, particularly quantum physics, which has revealed that reality behaves in ways that seem to echo ancient insights about the participatory nature of existence. At first glance, these domains appear to have little in common. Contemplative practice involves subjective exploration of consciousness through meditation, mindfulness, and other awareness-based techniques. Quantum physics involves objective measurement of subatomic particles and their interactions. Yet as both fields have deepened their investigations, remarkable parallels have emerged that suggest they may be exploring different aspects of the same underlying mystery. Take a moment to consider your own experience of awareness right now. As you listen to these words, your consciousness is actively selecting which aspects of experience to attend to while allowing others to remain in the background of potential awareness. You can choose to focus on the sound of my voice, shift attention to your breathing, notice sensations in your body, or observe thoughts as they arise and pass away. This capacity for conscious choice about where to direct attention has been recognized by contemplative traditions as one of awareness's most fundamental characteristics. Buddhist psychology describes this as the mind's natural ability to select objects of attention from the vast field of potential experience. Hindu philosophy speaks of consciousness as the witness that observes the play of phenomena without being limited by any particular content. What's remarkable is how closely these descriptions parallel certain aspects of quantum mechanics. In the quantum realm, particles exist in superposition states until observation collapses them into definite outcomes. The act of measurement doesn't just reveal what was already there, it appears to participate in determining what becomes real from among multiple possibilities. This parallel between consciousness and quantum observation remains metaphorical rather than literal. There's no scientific consensus that human consciousness directly influences quantum events, and the observation effect in quantum mechanics likely involves physical interactions between measuring devices and quantum systems rather than conscious awareness per se. Yet the resonance between these domains continues to intrigue researchers and contemplatives alike. Dr. Niels Bohr, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, was deeply interested in Eastern philosophy and saw parallels between quantum complementarity and ancient insights about the interdependence of observer and observed. He once wrote that the profound harmony he found between quantum physics and Eastern thought was no accident, suggesting that both were approaching fundamental truths about the nature of reality from different directions. As you reflect on your own experience of observation and choice, notice how awareness seems to participate in selecting what becomes prominent in your field of experience. While this doesn't directly influence quantum particles, it does suggest that consciousness has participatory qualities that echo throughout different scales of reality. Modern physics has revealed that what appears to be empty space is actually teeming with activity. The quantum vacuum, far from being void, seethes with virtual particles that appear and disappear in fleeting moments, zero-point energy fluctuations that create a background hum throughout the universe, and quantum fields that permeate all of existence. This discovery has profound implications for how we understand the relationship between potential and actual, between what could be and what is. The quantum realm operates according to principles of possibility rather than certainty, with definite outcomes emerging from fields of potential through processes we're still working to understand. Contemplative traditions have long described reality in remarkably similar terms. The Buddhist concept of emptiness doesn't refer to nothingness but to the absence of fixed, independent existence. According to this view, all phenomena arise from interdependent relationships within a vast field of potential, much like quantum particles emerging from underlying fields. The Hindu tradition speaks of consciousness as the ground of being from which all experiences arise and into which they dissolve. This isn't consciousness as personal awareness, but as a fundamental field of pure potentiality that gives rise to the manifest world. Some interpretations suggest this bears striking resemblances to quantum field theory's description of particles as excitations in underlying quantum fields. Take a breath and imagine what this might mean for your understanding of existence itself. If reality emerges from fields of possibility rather than consisting of fixed, separate objects, then the universe becomes far more fluid and participatory than our everyday experience suggests. You're not separate from this field of possibilities, but embedded within it, your own consciousness arising from and participating in the same fundamental processes that give rise to all phenomena. This perspective remains speculative and metaphorical rather than scientifically established. We don't have direct evidence that consciousness emerges from quantum fields, and the relationship between subjective experience and physical processes remains one of the deepest mysteries in science. Yet the parallels continue to inspire both researchers and contemplatives to explore reality's deeper structures. Research in quantum biology has revealed that living systems can maintain quantum coherence even in warm, complex environments. Plants use quantum effects in photosynthesis to achieve remarkable efficiency in energy transfer. Birds may use quantum entanglement in their navigation systems to detect magnetic fields across vast distances. These discoveries suggest that life has evolved sophisticated mechanisms for interfacing with quantum processes. While we don't yet know whether consciousness involves quantum effects, the discovery that biological systems can harness quantum phenomena opens new possibilities for understanding how awareness might connect with reality's deeper structures. Even if consciousness operates through purely classical mechanisms, it emerges from biological systems that demonstrably interface with quantum processes. Some researchers have explored whether meditation and other contemplative practices might influence quantum processes in the brain or body. While these ideas remain highly speculative and lack scientific consensus, they represent attempts to understand how consciousness might participate in the quantum realm through biological interfaces. As you continue listening, notice how your own awareness seems to emerge from and dissolve back into a vast field of potential experience. Each moment of consciousness appears to select certain possibilities from infinite potential, creating the unique flow of your personal experience within the larger ocean of existence. Perhaps nowhere do contemplative practice and quantum physics intersect more intriguingly than in research on meditation and altered states of consciousness. Advanced meditators often describe experiences that seem to echo quantum principles, states where ordinary subject-object boundaries dissolve, awareness exists without specific content, and consciousness recognizes its own fundamental nature as pure potential. Dr. Judson Brewer's research at Brown University has used brain imaging to study the neural correlates of advanced meditative states. When experienced practitioners enter deep absorption states, their brains display patterns of activity that differ dramatically from ordinary waking consciousness. The default mode network, typically active in self-referential thinking, becomes quieted, while other regions show increased coherence and synchronization. During these states, practitioners often report experiences that bear striking resemblances to quantum phenomena. They describe consciousness as existing in superposition-like states, embodying multiple possibilities simultaneously. They report non-local awareness that seems to transcend ordinary spatial boundaries. They experience what they describe as the collapse of subject-object duality into unified fields of pure awareness. These descriptions remain subjective experiences rather than objective quantum events. There's no scientific evidence that meditation directly influences quantum processes or that the brain enters quantum superposition states during contemplative practice. Yet the parallels between meditative phenomenology and quantum mechanics continue to fascinate researchers. Dr. John Hagelin, a quantum physicist and meditation researcher, has proposed that consciousness might interface with quantum fields through what he calls the unified field of natural law. According to his speculative model, deep meditation allows consciousness to access more fundamental levels of nature's functioning, potentially including quantum processes that underlie physical reality. While this remains unproven and controversial, it represents attempts to bridge subjective contemplative experience with objective physical description. Some meditation traditions describe states of consciousness that seem to transcend ordinary space-time limitations. Practitioners report experiences of knowing events at distant locations, accessing information about future possibilities, or connecting directly with other conscious beings across space. While these claims require careful scientific investigation and remain unverified, they suggest that consciousness might have capacities that transcend classical physical constraints. Take a moment to consider your own contemplative experiences, if you have them. Even in simple mindfulness practice, you might notice moments when awareness seems to expand beyond its usual boundaries, when the sense of being a separate observer dissolves into more unified experience, or when insights arise that seem to come from beyond ordinary thinking processes. Whether these experiences involve quantum processes or represent purely classical neural phenomena, they demonstrate consciousness's remarkable capacity for self-observation and self-transformation. Through contemplative practice, awareness can apparently recognize and modify its own patterns, accessing states and insights that reveal aspects of its fundamental nature. Research on meditation has consistently shown that contemplative practices can produce measurable changes in brain structure and function. Long-term practitioners display increased grey matter density in attention-related areas, enhanced connectivity between brain regions, and altered patterns of neural activity during both meditation and ordinary states of consciousness. These neuroplastic changes suggest that consciousness has genuine causal efficacy in shaping the neural substrate from which it emerges. While this doesn't necessarily involve quantum processes, it demonstrates that awareness can influence biological systems in ways that parallel how observation affects quantum systems. If you enjoy drifting through these explorations without interruption, members get every episode 48 hours early, completely ad-free. You can join them whenever you feel ready. One of quantum mechanics' most mysterious features is entanglement, where particles become correlated in ways that transcend ordinary spatial separation. When two particles become entangled, measuring one instantly influences the other, regardless of the distance between them. Einstein famously called this spooky action at a distance, yet experiments have repeatedly confirmed its reality. Contemplative traditions have long described consciousness as fundamentally interconnected rather than separate and isolated. Buddhist teachings emphasize the interdependence of all phenomena, suggesting that individual awareness is part of a larger web of conscious relationship. Hindu philosophy speaks of individual consciousness as waves on the ocean of universal awareness, distinct yet never separate from the whole. While human consciousness doesn't display quantum entanglement in any scientifically verified sense, research has revealed remarkable forms of connection and synchronization between conscious beings. When people engage in shared activities like meditation, chanting, or even simple conversation, their brainwaves begin to synchronize in measurable ways. Dr. Suzanne Dicker's research at NYU has found that students' brain activity synchronizes during engaging lectures, with greater synchronization correlating with better learning outcomes. This neural entrainment creates a form of collective coherence, where individual awareness becomes part of larger shared fields of experience. Some researchers have explored whether group meditation practices might produce measurable effects beyond the immediate participants. The Global Consciousness Project, run by Princeton University, has attempted to detect correlations between significant global events and the output of random number generators worldwide. While results remain controversial and require further replication, some studies have reported statistical deviations during major events that affect large numbers of people. These findings don't prove that consciousness creates quantum entanglement or directly influences physical systems at a distance. The mechanisms likely involve classical processes of social synchronization, shared attention, and collective behavior rather than quantum phenomena. Yet they demonstrate that consciousness exhibits forms of connection and correlation that echo quantum principles at macroscopic scales. Dr. Daniel Siegel's research on interpersonal neurobiology has revealed how consciousness literally shapes itself through relationship with other conscious beings. The developing brain requires attunement with caregivers to form healthy neural patterns, and adult consciousness continues to be influenced by the quality of interpersonal connection throughout life. This suggests that consciousness isn't fundamentally individual, but emerges through networks of relationship and connection. While each person experiences awareness from their unique perspective, that awareness is shaped by countless interactions with other conscious beings, creating patterns of correlation and mutual influence that span across space and time. Take a breath and notice how your own consciousness right now is being influenced by this shared exploration. Your awareness is interacting with ideas that emerged from countless other minds. The researchers, contemplatives, and thinkers who have contributed to our understanding of consciousness and quantum mechanics. In a very real sense, your individual awareness is participating in a collective inquiry into the nature of reality itself. Some meditation traditions include practices specifically designed to cultivate awareness of interconnection and mutual dependence. Loving kindness meditation involves extending feelings of goodwill toward all beings, recognizing the fundamental similarity of consciousness across different perspectives. These practices don't create quantum entanglement, but they may help practitioners recognize the already existing web of relationship and mutual influence that connects all conscious beings. As you continue listening, you might reflect on your own experiences of connection and synchronization with others. Perhaps you've noticed moments when conversation flows with unusual ease, when group activities create a sense of collective coherence, or when you felt particularly attuned to the emotional states of those around you. While these experiences involve classical rather than quantum processes, they reveal consciousness's inherently relational and participatory nature. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle reveals that at quantum scales, there are fundamental limits to how precisely we can know certain properties of particles simultaneously. The more precisely we determine a particle's position, the less precisely we can know its momentum, and vice versa. This isn't a limitation of measurement tools, but a fundamental feature of quantum reality itself. Contemplative traditions have described similar principles operating in the realm of consciousness. Buddhist psychology speaks of the mind's tendency to reify experience, to make solid and permanent what is actually fluid and impermanent. The more we try to grasp and define our experiences, the more elusive they become. The more we attempt to pin down the nature of awareness itself, the more it seems to slip through our conceptual frameworks. This parallel between quantum uncertainty and contemplative insights about the elusive nature of consciousness remains metaphorical rather than literal. There's no scientific evidence that consciousness operates according to quantum uncertainty principles, or that mental phenomena follow the mathematical relationships discovered in quantum mechanics. Yet the resonance between these domains continues to offer insights for both scientists and contemplatives. Dr. Wolfgang Pauli, one of the pioneers of quantum mechanics, was deeply interested in psychology and worked with Carl Jung to explore possible connections between quantum principles and consciousness. Pauli suggested that the complementarity principle in quantum mechanics, where particles can display apparently contradictory properties depending on how they're observed, might reflect deeper patterns that operate across different scales of reality. Throughout our gentle journey tonight, we've explored the fascinating parallels between ancient contemplative wisdom and modern quantum physics, discovering how both domains point toward a universe far more participatory and interconnected than our everyday experience suggests. We've seen how meditation research reveals consciousness's capacity to reshape its own neural substrate, how quantum mechanics demonstrates reality's dependence on observation, and how both traditions recognize the fundamental role of awareness in the unfolding of experience. Yet perhaps the deepest insight from this exploration isn't found in any particular parallel or connection, but in the recognition that consciousness itself remains the ultimate mystery. Whether awareness emerges from classical neural processes, interfaces with quantum fields, or transcends physical description entirely, you are the living proof of its existence and the direct beneficiary of its extraordinary capacities. As you drift into rest tonight, remember that you're not separate from the mysteries we have explored, but intimately woven into their very fabric. Your consciousness, right now attending to these final words, represents one of the universe's most remarkable achievements, awareness awakening to its own infinite nature. In this recognition lies perhaps the most profound discovery of all, that in exploring consciousness, we are consciousness exploring itself through the gentle marriage of ancient wisdom and quantum wonder. Sweet dreams, fellow explorer. Rest well in the infinite mystery of your own aware presence.